Now, the United States, as we all know, plays a leadership role in many things. And in the case of the coal industry, the Obama administration and the EPA have pushed ahead with what they call their Clean Power Plan. They presented it as a necessity for a better environment, reducing CO2 emissions. Others see it differently. Some argue it's going to kill off the US coal industry and it's illegal. Our next guest is at the heart of that fight. Please will you welcome Bob Murray, Chairman, President, and Chief Executive Officer of Murray Energy Corporation. Very good to see you, Mr. Murray. You've been name-checked quite a bit already, you know. Anyway, it's good to see you.
Thank you.
You're taking on the government. Maybe you'd like to explain a little bit why.
Yes, Murray Energy Corporation has filed 5 lawsuits against the Obama administration. We've been joined in those lawsuits by 16 of the 50 states in the U.S. What he has done in his war on coal, and he's a very unpopular president in our country, in case you don't know, and certainly with coal. We filed 5 lawsuits against them. He's closed, under other regulations, 411 coal-fired plants. That's 101,000 megawatts of coal-fired generation. In the United States, that's 4 cents a kilowatt hour at the bus bar, while he advocates wind and solar, which is 22 cents a kilowatt hour in the United States. And it gets a 4 cent a kilowatt hour subsidy from the taxpayer. What he's done is blatantly illegal. He took the Clean Air Act of 1971 as amended in 1990, did not cover carbon dioxide, and under that rule has destroyed much of the United States coal industry. We will win these lawsuits. We will overturn the global warming goofiness in the United States of America. And when he comes to Paris in a couple of weeks and tells you that the United States is going to be bound, I want to make it clear, he has no legal authority to do that. All agreements, international agreements, must be approved by our United States Senate. And the Senate is 2/3 against Obama. He'll come out and make all kinds of commitments, but he will not be able to back them up. And the head of the UN climate change from Morocco just said, we're not going to enforce any agreements. So it's going to be another UN show, climate show, where nothing's going to happen because nobody's going to enforce it. Everybody will go out, go home, and the bureaucrats will have their day. We are going to overturn Obama. I know that I can because I already have. I filed a lawsuit under the Utility Act, a Mercury MACT, won at our U.S. Supreme Court, July 29th, 5-4 decision, the top court of America, said, Mr. Obama, you have to count job losses, you have to count the cost of this global goofiness in any regulation that you passed. He did not do it. We won the case. That is one of our 5 arguments joined by the 16 states in the Clean Power Plan lawsuit, and we have already won that part of it. We will overturn it. Don't count on this global goofiness coming out of the United States.
You've been very clear. We'll come back to that in a minute. Let's talk more widely about the market and draw on your experience because, you know, you're heavily invested in the coal industry, you're expanding. This is Barcelona's liveliest newspaper, which I recommend to you. You're possibly sitting on it, so it'd be a good idea to have a look at it. Front page, Glencore comes out fighting. Glencore reviewing Australian operations. We won't and can't run mines that don't make a financial contribution. We're looking at our Australian mines. Why are you generally optimistic about the future of coal?
Well, I'm not totally optimistic, Gavin. I'm cautiously optimistic.
Good.
I've had a concentric ellipse strategy where I target, in the 30 years that I built Murray Energy, and I was CEO of another U.S. coal company prior to that for many years. I've used this concentric ellipse strategy where I focus on scrubbers, technology, high heat coals, low mining costs, longwall mining. We put together about 18 billion tons in the ground of longwall mineable coal. That's virtually all of the longwall mineable coal in most of the basins in the United States. And with our low cost structure, I drew concentric ellipses out from every one of those power plants, avoiding railroads where I could, and used water transportation. So, like the Ford emblem, the blue with the little silver rings, concentric ellipses, that's always been my strategy. So when I bought Consolidation Coal Company, fit in ellipses. When I bought Foresight Energy, fit within the ellipses. We are the low-cost producer in the U.S. We focus on the longwall mining. We even build 4 factories. We build every piece of our own mining machinery. We're the only coal company in the world that can do that. I operate 26 towboats on the river system, 600 barges, about 5 ports, inland ports. And then we have the recent acquisition in Colombia. We now own 34% of Javelin Global Commodities, based in London. So we've expanded into the world markets using this infrastructure that we built. That's been our strategy, to be the low-cost producer. I don't believe that there's only 2 coal companies in the United States going to survive as they are. And I have not been wrong yet. I've called them in the order of bankruptcy. Only 2. They'll either have to sell assets, no one to sell them to. They're going to have to restructure, or they will be bankrupt. I think only 2 survive. I hope Murray Energy to be one of them.
On Colombia, what do you see in Colombia that Goldman Sachs didn't see? Because I take it you don't believe they're mugs.
Well, I looked at Colombia 3 years ago and told Goldman Sachs I wasn't interested. Goldman Sachs is a banker, a wonderful world banker, and my banker. And they didn't want to be in the commodity business anymore. And there are also regulations under the Obama Security and Exchange Commission for bankers to divest of commodities in the U.S. So that combination drove Goldman Sachs to want to dispose of that property pretty badly. I've had this great relationship with them for years. They said, we want you to have it. It won't come back if you take it, and we know you can run it well. So we made a transaction. It was good for them. It was good for us because it gave us a low sulfur coal, Gavin, that we could blend with our higher sulfur U.S. coals in the world markets.
It's a good mix. It's a good mix for you.
It was a good transaction for both parties.
And it was a good price.
It was an excellent price.
I'm just sort of interested in dealing with Goldman Sachs, but that's a whole other conversation. Actually, in terms of, I don't know how it is in the United States, but in terms of divestment campaigns and the politics, again, to touch on that, how do you think the coal industry should handle that when people say, you know, this university shouldn't invest in your company because it's dirty coal? What do you say to that?
It's a difficult question. I think, first of all, we have to tell them that we're always going to be 30% of the market for electric power generation. Natural gas, for the first time in June, produced more electricity than did coal. First time in the history of America. And before Obama, the electric utility was 52% coal-fired. Today it's 37, tied with gas. I believe it'll go on to 30. I'm more pessimistic than anybody in America on the future of the coal industry. In fact, this recession we have in coal, I don't look for us to get out of it until late 17 at the earliest. And that's my planning horizon. Back to the divestiture. We have to convince the American public and the investors that at least 30% of the coal industry, electric power generation has got to be coal in the United States, or the lights will go out and we'll freeze in the dark. Natural gas will have an equal share. And we have to, as a company, stress our concentric ellipse strategy, our low-cost strategy. And so there'll be exceptions, Gavin, to that divestiture. And you have to prove that you are the exception. And I think that's what we're doing.
Do you see any benefit in you and your company spending more money on technology, CCS, or anything else to see off that side of the argument? I mean, is that something you've contemplated or not?
I think carbon capture and technology, carbon capture and sequestration, is a myth. It's a pseudonym for no coal. I've had 15 years of experience in my own life building the Great Plains Coal Gasification Project. The carbon capture is easy. Technology's there. Sequestration is the problem. I spent 15 years trying to figure out how to get the CO2 off of that gas plant. You had to find a formation that you could pump it in. And then when you found it, the farmer, the rancher above it or beside it, he didn't want it because that gas migrates. And it takes more pipelines in America, if you look at the formations, they can sequester gas, than the whole country's got in pipelines right now. It is a myth. It is a pseudonym for no coal. Sequestration will not happen in the United States. And economically, when you put that all in, that even makes it more out of the question. But it's practically not there, let alone economically.
Okay. Let me throw it open to questions from the floor, because I know people will want to ask you some things. There's anybody? It's difficult to see sometimes because of the light. Yes, gentleman there, and then I think there's somebody in the corner too. I think there's somebody behind you.
You were very eloquent about what would result at Paris, or you felt would result in Paris. What would you like to see coming out of Paris?
I'd like to see the United Nations eliminated and not have the Paris meeting if I had my way, which is ridiculous, to be very honest with you. So I see a lot of talk. I see a lot of posturing. I see a lot of bureaucratic nonsense. They'll go back to the country. The head of the climate change from Morocco already said he's not going to enforce it. And they'll go back, have their talk, and nothing will happen, just as happened at all these other COP meetings of the climate change of the UN. I see absolutely nothing coming out of it other than words and a lot of bureaucratic dinners and a lot of people looking important. Remember, Obama cannot bind the United States. He legally cannot do it. We have a constitution that forbids that.
So what's your climate change strategy?
What is my climate change strategy? To let the world know that while the Arctic ice cap is melting, the Antarctic ice cap is larger than it's ever been in the history of measurements, which went back to 1979. I think global warming is a hoax. I think it's a political power grab of America's power grid, maybe the world power grid. If you want to change this country of America or the world in an evil way or a diabolical way, get control of the availability, the reliability, and the cost of electricity. And you've got the country. You've also taken people's freedoms. It has nothing to do with the environment. It's a political power grab of the world's power grid. It's a power thing. It's politics, period. Nothing to do with the environment.
Gentleman over there.
Mr. Murray, do you have any interest in buying any other assets outside the United States?
We'll always keep open to that. Right now, I mine 85 million tons of coal a year in the United States, 3 million tons in Colombia. Without very much capital investment, I can go to 115 million tons in the United States. So we have plenty of opportunity there. It's high heat coal, Northern App, 13,500, Illinois Basin, 11,800. It is higher sulfur. We have other reserves in other parts of the country. I'm focused on the United States. I won't close the door to looking at anything, but we've got to be very selective. And by the way, it has to fit within my concentric ellipse strategy. It has to be high heat. It's got to be long wall mineable. It's got to have good transportation infrastructure. And we go from there. We're always looking. We're looking at properties right now, but you know, I've been in business now for 30 years, and you notice I didn't acquire. I laid back never had any money either, never did, and really. But I had a lot of expertise and a good team of people. And just recently, you've seen us grow to be the largest coal miner in the U.S. And I waited until the opportunities were there. There are many out there, but they're cats and dogs right now around the country. They don't have a strategy. I have a strategy, concentric ellipses. It's got to fit within that. What people have got for sale are cats and dogs. I don't want them. That's why they're in trouble, and that's why only 2 coal companies in the United States, in my opinion, will survive financially the way they are right now.
I've got a question that was sent in, possibly because the person who wants it answered is frightened to actually stand up and say. Earlier this year, you joined forces with Foresight. How'd you get on with Chris Klein?
Very well. Chris is a real coal miner. He built that business from scratch, and it's to his credit. He knows coal mining. I invited him to be on my board of directors, my invitation. And I like him. He's a good coal miner. We speak the same language. We both spent a lot of time underground in the coal mines. I worked underground 16 years. Every day, I still go underground at my age, every week. And that's Chris Klein. We hit it off very well.
And in terms of your time scale, you said, you know, you think things may be pretty rough at least until the end of 2017, if I got you right.
Yes, sir.
Now, is that for economic reasons, or is it because you're also waiting for a change of the guard at the White House, or both, maybe?
Both. Both. The destruction, the closure of the 411 coal-fired units, and it's the poor. I grew up very poor. The sad part of it is the poorest segment of our population in the United States are going to get hurt the worst. We're going to have double-digit electricity rates already without the Clean Power Plan by 2020. Double digits in 40 of the 50 states. Nationally, it's going to be about a third across the board, and the poor people are the ones that have to pay a higher percentage of their disposable income. That bothers me very much. So this will come to an end. We do have to get a different administration, and Hillary Clinton isn't the answer, believe me. And so I'm worried about that. But I still think no matter what happens politically in the United States, we're not going to dig out of this morass in the global markets for late 2017 at the earliest, and I'm doing my planning in my business on that basis, Gavin.
And so where do you see yourself in, say, 5 years' time, and the industry in the United States? I mean, a lot healthier than it is now, you hope?
I hope. You know, it's hard for me to say. I think you'll see an equal amount of natural gas. You know, at our Henry Hub, which is the benchmark price of gas, it's $2.61 yesterday. But I'm competing against $1.40, $1.50 an MCF shale gas. So we're able to compete with that. It's unbelievable. There's 20 LNG ports that are waiting for permits from the Obama administration. He won't approve them for environmental reasons. If we can get those ports opened up and get the pipelines built, we get that gas out of the country to nations of the world that need it, and get some dollars back to the United States, this will change. Until something happens to get rid of this glut of gas, it could go beyond 17, at least domestically in the United States.
And just a final thought. How well or how badly do you think this industry as a whole does in explaining itself? Because the way you have put it, you have got a lot of people depending on you. Now, people will disagree with you, of course they will, but how well does the industry actually explain some of the points you've made?
I think we do it very poorly. Number one, the profit margins in coal have not allowed for the massive public affairs programs to compete with the Obama administration. He spends $168 million a year just on public relations people, my tax money. I don't have $168 million, but he spends that every year just for public relations on climate change. We've never had the money to do that. Our trade associations have been not effective either because they haven't had the money. And I'm not hiding behind it. I speak out wherever I can. But we don't have any allies in coal in the United States. People don't understand. And now we have the Obama administration teaching children about their carbon footprint in school. So it's getting a lot worse. And I think until the lights go out, until people get cold in the dark, they're going to realize that they cannot go to wind and solar and gas, that they're going to have to be a base supply of fuel to have reliable, low-cost electricity, a stable supply in the world, and that is coal.
Now, somehow I think that the Brain Box sessions might be interested in talking about some of this. But Bob Murray, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
Good to meet you, Gavin.
Good to meet you too, Mr. Murray.